Hi YouTube! In this video I'm going to be asking if size really does matter. Join me and find out. Roll titles. Well, hi you merry bunch of men and women, welcome to the channel. It's Brian again with you once again, and I've been looking at something on Facebook tonight. Now, I usually find that Facebook can be a sour, caustic place at times, but there was a discussion on one of the Micro Four Thirds groups asking about whether we're actually going to see 40 megapixel plus sensors at any point in the future, whether they've stopped development on sensor size, whether we're stuck at 20 megapixels stacked or 25 megapixels with Lumix. Is that as far as we're going to get? And I had a little think of this, and I had to do some looking up. But I do remember seeing a Micro Four Thirds sensor which was about 33 megapixel, and I'm sure it was by Sharp. So I had a look on the internet, and sure enough, about 2019, Sharp actually put out a Micro Four Thirds sensor, which was a 33 megapixel sensor, I think it was. The interesting thing was it was a 16 by 9 sensor, so although it was Micro Four Thirds in its size, it was specifically a 16 by 9 rather than a 4 by 3. But that got me thinking about it. There was a lot of comments on this backwards and forwards about whether we should have it, whether we shouldn't, the advantages, the disadvantages. And I really started thinking about why we will, in my opinion, have 40 megapixel plus sensors in the next 5 or 6 years. And if it's actually going to make a real difference. Well, first of all, a lot of you will have seen my opinions on megapixels in the past. I'm not a great megapixel hound. I started off with Micro Four Thirds cameras. My first one was a 16 megapixel, but since then I've actually got a 12 megapixel with the G1, and I've used 20 megapixel on that. But I've also had much bigger pixel counts when I was shooting with Canon, and I didn't really get super impressed by it. Yes, they are really good if you start cropping in a long way, but even on a medium crop, you can still get some fantastic quality from something as small as a 16 or 20 megapixel sensor. But if we've already got a 33 megapixel sensor, well, why aren't we using it? And if we've got that, does that preclude us going any bigger? Is this the end? Has Micro Four Thirds got a natural maximum? Well, let's have a little walk back and have a little think about it. And before I go on, if you're not subscribed to this channel, please hit the button below. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it makes a huge difference to the channel. And give me a thumbs up and like the video, even if you don't, because it really does help me as well to get this video shared to more and more people, so more and more people can see it. Anyway, yeah, well, let's have a look at where we are with sensors at the moment. We're basically sitting still around about the 20 megapixel. There's only a couple of cameras out from Lumix which have gone to the 25, and very successfully. They've got great results. So it obviously can go higher than the 20 and get some fantastic results. Now, obviously, with a smaller physical sensor, the individual the individual cells on that, the individual sort of faces on that are going to be smaller themselves. They're going to take in less light. But I've always heard this is a huge problem. And yet when I've looked at what we've got, we're told all these figures about things like dynamic range and all sorts of things. But when we see it in the flesh, I don't believe there's as big a difference as people make out to be. Yes, there is a difference. I'm not saying there's not. But it's not this monumental jump between Micro Four Thirds and an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor. It's not as huge as people are making out, if it's discernible by most people at all. And the other thing with it as well is we've got this technology, so why isn't it being incorporated in now? Well, there's a few reasons in my opinion, and these are purely my opinions, but it's from certain observations for quite some time. I'm sorry I've got a bit of a nasally sort of voice, or a lack of nasal voice. I'm still on the back end of a bit of a cold. But the thing for me is, I believe that, first of all, the likes of Olympus and Lumix, who are what I call the big two. The big two in this are the ones who are the market domination of Micro Four Thirds sensors. Although, remember, Micro Four Thirds sensors are used in a lot of other camera systems. It's not just the big two. They're using a lot of other camera systems. It's just that these are the main ones that we consider with Micro Four Thirds format. So yes, we could have that. We've already got 33 megapixel sensors, and I'm sure that we could actually have bigger ones already in existence that I'm not aware of. They're usually quite a way ahead of what the public know. So why aren't we seeing them being used? Why did Olympus, or OM Systems should I say, still stick with a 20 megapixel sensor? Well, first of all, they go onto a stacked sensor, and that's made a big difference in how the sensor is done. It is a far, far better sensor than the non-stacked sensor, the 20 megapixel previous. Lumix, of course, have gone for the 25 megapixel, which gives us a greater pixel count, but it's not stacked. But all of that helps. Now, as I say, I understand if you're somebody who's birding and you want to avoid using super long lenses, or even if you're using super long lenses and want to get closer in, you'll want to crop. And that's understandable. But even with a 20 megapixel sensor, I think there's an awful lot of cropping which can go on without giving you bad results. But, and this is a big but for me, to go to the next stage, I believe we do have the sensors out there. I believe that they've already developed them. They've already been very, very successful. But it's how we incorporate them. And of course, it's not just putting a new sensor in and say, right, we've gone to 25 megapixel, right, we've gone to 30 or 33, whatever it'll work. There's an awful lot goes on with that. First of all, you've got a bigger sensor. You've got much more data which is flowing just from the sensor around. You've got to start manipulating it more. And to do that, you need faster processors and bigger onboard memories to deal with it. Whether you're transferring data between the camera and an SD card, the SD cards are going to have to take up more space, you know, and it's all these little bits and pieces which come in. Now, I know we've got faster cards now, but they're expensive. And the other thing is as well with that, we've got to start developing faster processors. We've got to start building in better heat dissipation. These things will all produce more heat. And one of the things that Micro Four Thirds is very good for is having a fairly good heat range that it works in. Because it's a smaller sensor, because it's a smaller pixel count, we tend to be very, very good at being able to have cameras which will run in smaller bodies but still not overheat. Look what happened with the full frame cameras when we started getting the bigger pixel counts and the 4K and 6K and 8K sort of range when we're doing videos. They started overheating in big time, and we had problems with that. Generally, Micro Four Thirds have been very, very good for it. I mean, I'm shooting with a Lumix G100. And I'm shooting at 1080p. It'll shoot all day 1080p basically. It does have time limits, but you know, the thing is that I've got a good long amount of time I can use this at 1080p and be able to shoot videos, even though it's a tiny little body, which of course I have. So yeah, so let's see. I mean, what else is going to be on the camera which is problem? Probably because we've got bigger processors, because we've got a bigger sensor, because we're handling more data, are going to need bigger batteries too. So without those, we're going to have no usable time. It's all tied together. So although we might have these sensors in the pipeline, I see an awful lot of problems which have to be overcome before we can use them in the field. Now the other thing is as well, this takes a lot more research and development. It takes a huge amount of background work to get all these in and still make the cameras themselves usable, small enough to be still Micro Four Thirds cameras, while they become huge. And we've seen with some of the Lumix cameras, the GH6, GH7, we've seen them really get bigger and bigger over the time to be able to do all the things we want them to do. We want these cameras to do an awful lot of things, and to get them into a tiny little package and to make them reliable and to make them dependable is a big thing for me. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 or 10 years we have these 40 megapixel sensors. And that's great. But so long as it's not at the expense of reliability and dependability in the cameras, so long as it's not at the expense of weight and size, and to do that is going to take a huge amount of financial input to get them actually designed and get them tested and get them out in the field. And I've already seen with the release of the OM3 just this week that people are very upset about prices going up. About $900, something like that. You've got the OM3, but people are complaining about the price and the availability of that. Now, to me, we've taken an OM1 Mark II, and we've put it into a much smaller, much neater body. And again, there must be compromises made, or if there's not compromises made, then there's got to be new techniques which are being put in, and that takes development cost and testing cost. And if we're not willing to pay for the cameras, we ain't going to get them. So it's a balance to me. So what do you think? Let me know what you think about Micro Four Thirds cameras with larger sensors. Do you think we actually need them? I've said many times in the past that my favourite camera is probably my OM1 Mark 1 with a 16 megapixel sensor. I get some fantastic shots out of that. But if you need bigger pixel count, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your comments. If you think that we don't need larger pixel counts, let me know. If you think we do need larger pixel counts, again, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read your comments. The other thing is as well, of course, we're trying to fit a quart into a pint pot. Now in comparison, it's not exact because we've got slightly different format size, but in comparison, we've got a 2:1 aspect ratio for the Micro Four Thirds compared to full frame. Now doesn't mean the sensor is twice as big. It means it's twice as long and twice as high, but it's actually 4 times the area, 4 times the surface area to be able to get those pixels onto. So effectively what we've got with a 20 megapixel sensor is equivalent to a full frame with 80 megapixels. So we're not doing too bad in what we've got already insofar as that. The pixel density is round about the same as an 80 megapixel full frame. So what we have in this tiny little package of Micro Four Thirds in this is really a little bit of a wonder. It's a little bit of an awesome wonder for me. But it's not the end of development. I'd like to know if there's anybody from on the inside of Lumix or Olympus, Lumix or OM System. I keep saying Olympus, who could actually give us a bit of a knees up insofar as what the future development holds. But as I say, my prediction is within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll certainly have sensors in the 30 megapixels, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that 40 megapixel hit. And remember, from what I've just said, a 40 megapixel is a 160 megapixel full frame equivalent. That's a huge pixel density. Let me know in the comments below. Until the next time, this is Brian James at Micro Four Thirds saying keep on taking your camera out, keep on taking photographs which you enjoy with whatever pixel count you have, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.